She was certain you needed her, certain you would stay available, predictable, easy to reach, easy to read, easy to control. In her mind, your presence was guaranteed, like something that would never change no matter how much it was taken for granted. You were the one who replied fast, who explained everything, who stayed even when it cost your peace. You were consistent, loyal, and always there. And because of that, she stopped seeing your value. Not because you had none, but because you made it look unlimited. But then, without warning, the pattern broke. You stopped reacting the same way. You stopped chasing the same conversations. You stopped giving the same energy. And that single shift created confusion, distance, and a silence she could not control. That is where everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. And that is exactly what this video is about. In this video, you are going to understand a powerful truth that most people never realize until it is too late. You will learn why being always available slowly reduces your value in someone's eyes. You will see how attention, when given without limits, stops feeling special and starts feeling expected. There is a hidden psychological pattern behind this, one that explains why people respect what feels rare and overlook what feels guaranteed. This is not about manipulation. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding human behavior at a deeper level. Because when you understand it, you stop making the same mistakes that keep you stuck in the same cycle. You will also discover why silence becomes powerful when used with control. Most people think silence means weakness, distance, or emotional shutdown. But the truth is very different. Silence, when it comes from clarity and self-respect, sends a stronger message than any explanation ever could. It shifts the dynamic completely. It removes the emotional leverage that others rely on. It creates space, and in that space, perception begins to change. This is one of the least talked about shifts, yet it is one of the most effective, and very few people use it correctly. There is another layer that most people ignore, and that is the moment when you stop trying to prove your worth. Many people live in a constant state of proving themselves, explaining themselves, and justifying their actions. They think this will earn respect and understanding. But in reality, it often does the opposite. It places you in a position where your value depends on someone else's approval. In this video, you will see why stepping out of that cycle changes everything. You will understand how real confidence is built quietly, without announcements, without validation, and without the need to be seen. As you continue watching, you will notice how the perspective slowly shifts from her to you. Because the real story is not about her reaction, it is about your transformation. It is about the moment you stop losing yourself just to keep someone else. It is about the moment you realize that peace is more important than attention and self-respect is more important than approval. This shift is subtle, but its impact is powerful. It changes how people see you, it changes how they treat you, and most importantly, it changes how you see yourself. There are also lesser-known patterns that will be revealed in this video. Patterns that explain why people suddenly come back when you stop chasing them, why they start noticing you when you pull away, and why absence creates a stronger emotional response than constant presence. These are not random events. These are predictable reactions based on human psychology, and once you see them clearly, you will never look at relationships the same way again. You will stop reacting emotionally and start responding with awareness. You will stop giving energy where it is not valued and start protecting it where it matters. This is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about becoming clear about your time, your energy, and your boundaries. It is about understanding that not everyone deserves full access to you, and that respect is not something you ask for, it is something you reflect through your actions. When you reach that level, something interesting happens. The same person who once took you for granted begins to notice your absence. The same person who was comfortable with your presence begins to feel uncertain without it. And that is when the dynamic shifts completely. If you stay until the end of this video, you will walk away with a different mindset. A mindset that does not depend on attention, approval, or validation. A mindset that understands value, respects boundaries, and moves with quiet confidence. You will see clearly why becoming untouchable is not about pushing people away, but about no longer accepting what disturbs your peace. And once you understand this, you will never go back to being the version of yourself that was easily overlooked. So if you are ready to understand what really changes when you stop chasing and start choosing yourself, stay with this video until the end, because what you are about to learn is not just information, it is a shift in perspective that can change how you move in every relationship in your life. Welcome to the channel, where we focus on discipline, clarity, and self-respect. If this is the kind of mindset you want to build, make sure to subscribe and stay connected, because here, we do not chase attention, we build value. Something shifted quietly, almost unnoticed at first. The pattern broke in a way that did not need an announcement. You stopped chasing, you stopped reaching out first every single time. The constant need to check your phone, to wait for a reply, to fill every silence with words slowly faded. You stopped explaining yourself. No more long messages trying to make someone understand your intentions, your feelings, your actions, and more importantly, you stopped needing. Not in a cold or careless way, but in a calm and controlled way. The urgency disappeared. The emotional dependency started dissolving. And in that subtle shift, something unexpected happened. She did not recognize you anymore. The version of you she had grown comfortable with, the one she understood and could predict, was no longer there. The energy felt different, the responses felt different, the presence felt different. And that unfamiliarity created tension, a kind of silence that felt louder than any argument. Most people never notice how this pattern begins. It starts small, almost invisible. Most people give too much without realizing it. They reply fast, almost instantly, as if their time has no value. They make themselves available at all times, even when it disrupts their own priorities. They try to fix everything, solve every problem, smooth every conflict, even when it is not their responsibility. They become the emotional support system, the constant presence, the one who holds everything together. And in doing so, they slowly lose their own center. They make someone their priority while being treated like an option, not because the other person is always intentionally careless, but because human nature adjusts to what is constantly available. What is always there stops feeling special. What is always given stops being appreciated. And over time, she got used to that version of you, the version that stayed no matter what, the version that tolerated more than it should, the version that kept giving without asking for balance. That version of you became predictable. And predictability, when mixed with over-availability, removes mystery, removes tension, removes the sense of value. It creates comfort, but not respect. It creates familiarity, but not appreciation. And without realizing it, you were reinforcing that dynamic every single day. Every fast reply, every extra effort, every moment you chose her over yourself added to that pattern. It became normal, expected, almost invisible. And when something becomes invisible, it becomes easy to overlook. Then one day, something inside you shifted. Not because of a single event, not because of one argument, but because of a slow realization that had been building over time. You got tired, not of her, not of the connection, but of losing yourself in the process. Tired of always being the one who gives more. Tired of always adjusting, always understanding, always staying silent when something felt off. Tired of feeling like your effort was constant but the return was uncertain. It was not anger, it was clarity. A quiet awareness that something was not balanced, and that awareness changed everything. That was the turning point. The moment where the external situation stayed the same, but your internal response changed completely. You did not announce it, you did not create drama around it, you simply started moving differently, you started choosing differently. And that internal shift began to reflect in your actions. You stopped chasing, not as a strategy, not as a way to get a reaction, but as a natural result of understanding your own value. You stopped texting first all the time. You stopped being the one who always initiates. You allowed space to exist without rushing to fill it. You stopped seeking validation, no more looking for reassurance through replies, through attention, through small signs that you are still important. You stopped trying to prove your worth, because deep down you realize that worth does not need proof, it needs recognition. And if someone cannot recognize it, no amount of proving will change that. And in that moment, something shifted in her perception. The moment you stopped chasing, she started noticing. Not because you became louder, but because you became quieter. Not because you demanded attention, but because you stopped giving it so freely. The absence of your usual behavior created a gap, and that gap created awareness. The same energy that was once taken for granted suddenly felt different because it was no longer constant. Then came the next layer of change. Your silence became your power. You did not argue anymore. Not because you had nothing to say, but because you understood that not every situation deserves your energy. You did not react to every message, every tone, every shift in behavior. You did not explain your every move. You allowed things to be as they are without constantly trying to control how they are perceived. And that silence carried weight. It said things that words never could. Because silence, when it comes from clarity, is not empty. It is full of meaning. It shows control. It shows emotional strength. It shows that you are no longer driven by impulse, by the need to respond, by the need to be understood at all costs. Silence removes the emotional reaction that many dynamics rely on. It breaks the cycle, and once that cycle is broken, the entire dynamic starts to change. Most people misunderstand silence. They think it is weakness, they think it is avoidance, but controlled silence is strength. It is the ability to hold your position without needing to defend it constantly. It is the ability to observe without reacting, and that kind of presence is rare. And because it is rare, it is powerful. At the same time, your focus began to shift inward. You started building yourself. You started focusing on your goals, your growth, your direction. Your time became valuable, not because you said it was, but because you started treating it that way. You stopped wasting it on overthinking, on unnecessary conversations, on chasing responses that did not come naturally. Your attention became rare. And when something becomes rare, it becomes valuable. You became busy building a life, not chasing a person. Your energy moved toward things that create growth, stability, and purpose. And that shift was visible, even without words, because people notice where your energy goes. They notice what you prioritize. And when your focus is no longer centered around them, they feel it. Now the perspective begins to change. Now she feels the distance, not because you created it aggressively, but because you stopped closing it constantly. She feels the uncertainty, the same uncertainty you once felt, now reflected back. She feels the loss of control. Because the version of you she understood, the one she could predict, the one she knew would always respond the same way, is no longer there. And that creates a different kind of tension, a psychological shift. Because human nature reacts to change. It reacts to what is no longer certain. It reacts to what is no longer guaranteed. And when the dynamic changes, perception changes with it. The version of you she controlled does not exist anymore. Not because you became someone else, but because you removed the patterns that allowed that control to exist. You stopped feeding the dynamic that kept you in that position. And once that dynamic is gone, the structure collapses. This is where the idea of becoming untouchable begins to take shape. And it is often misunderstood. Being untouchable does not mean being cold. It does not mean being distant or emotionally unavailable. It does not mean pushing people away or acting superior. It means something much simpler, yet much stronger. It means you are no longer available for disrespect. It means your boundaries are clear, even if they are not spoken out loud. It means your time, your energy, your attention are no longer given without awareness. It means you choose where you invest yourself instead of giving yourself automatically. You did not become hard. You became clear, clear about what you accept, clear about what you walk away from, clear about your value without needing to say it out loud. And that clarity reflects in everything you do, in your silence, in your presence, in your absence. And that is what makes the difference. Not loud actions, not dramatic changes, but quiet, consistent shifts that change how you move, how you respond, how you exist within the same situation. And once those shifts happen, everything else begins to follow. People don't value what they always have access to. It becomes normal. it becomes expected, and slowly it becomes invisible. But the moment that access changes, the moment that constant presence turns into controlled distance, perception shifts, attention returns, curiosity returns, respect begins to rebuild, not because something new was added, but because something familiar was no longer freely available. That is the part most people miss. They think value comes from doing more, giving more, proving more. But real value often shows itself when you stop overgiving and start choosing where your energy goes. She didn't suddenly change into a different person. Her behavior is a response to what she experiences. And what she experienced was a version of you that was always there, always giving, always available. When that version disappeared, everything felt different to her. The certainty was gone. The predictability was gone. And in that space, she finally saw what was always there but never fully noticed. Not because you forced her to see it, but because you stopped making it easy to ignore. You changed, quietly, without noise, without announcements. You changed the way you respond. You changed the way you show up. You changed the way you value your own time, your own attention, your own presence, and that internal shift created an external impact. The dynamic changed because you changed. The energy changed because you changed, and that is why she noticed. This is not about winning someone back. This is not about control. This is about understanding your own worth and moving in a way that reflects it. It is about realizing that respect is not something you chase. It is something you build through your actions, your boundaries, and your consistency. When you reach that level, you stop seeking attention and you start attracting it naturally, not because you try, but because you no longer need to. If this changed how you see your value, then take a moment and lock that mindset in, because once you understand this, you should never go back to being the version of yourself that gave everything without awareness. Stay on this path, keep building yourself, keep protecting your peace, keep moving with clarity. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. This channel is about discipline, clarity, and self-respect, not chasing people, but becoming someone who does not need to. Like the video if it connected with you, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And remember, the real power was never in holding on. It was in knowing when to let go and rise above it.